At 6, a hospital electrician admits murdering 2 women and sexually abusing at least 100 dead bodies. David Fuller had access to mortuaries in Kent. His victims included children. Today, the 67-year-old admitted murdering, then sexually assaulting Wendy Nell and Caroline Pearce in Tunbridge Wells almost 35 years ago.
All right, David, you're under arrest on suspicion of the murders of Wendy Nell and Caroline Pearce.
Police finally tracked him down last year thanks to DNA advances. At his home, they found photographs and videos from the mortuaries. Also on the programme tonight, the Conservative MP Owen Paterson, at the centre of a row over lobbying rules, resigns after a major government U-turn. Cervical cancer has been virtually eradicated in young women because of the HPV vaccine, says a new study. More than 40 countries promised to phase out the use of coal, but Australia, India, China and America aren't among them. And the Christmas ads are launched to try to boost business for retailers over the next few weeks.
Coming up on Sports Day later in the hour on the BBC News channel, we'll have more on the crisis at Yorkshire Cricket, with more sponsors ending their association with the county over claims of institutional racism at the club.
Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. A 67-year-old man has admitted murdering 2 women, Wendy Nell and Caroline Pearce, in Kent almost 35 years ago, and then decades later sexually abusing at least 100 corpses in hospital mortuaries. For more than 30 years, David Fuller was a maintenance worker at the Kent and Sussex Hospital and then the Tunbridge Wells Hospital, until police finally tracked him down last December thanks to advances in DNA testing. Police have contacted the families of many of the victims assaulted between 2008 and 2020, but detectives say they may never know the full extent of his crimes. This report from our Home Affairs correspondent Tom Simons contains disturbing details.
Hello. Morning. David, it's the police. Hello.
After 33 years, he almost seemed to be expecting it.
All right, David, you're under arrest on suspicion of the murders of Wendy Nell and Caroline Pearce in 1987. Do you understand? Yeah.
David Fuller, Mr. Normal, at least on the outside. Wendy Nell and Caroline Pearce, independent young women in a quiet town in the 1980s.
You don't expect it in a small town like Tunbridge Wells. Like myself, we were all just working locally. It could have happened to any of us.
Julie Monks was a friend of Wendy and worked with her in a cafe.
She always wanted to get married and have children and be a homemaker. That's what she wanted to do.
But Wendy's home, her tiny bedsit, was where she was murdered. Caroline was attacked on her doorstep and taken away. 3 weeks later, a farm worker looked down from his tractor into a drainage ditch and spotted a body. Like Wendy, Caroline had been beaten, strangled and sexually assaulted. Police were pretty sure the same man had killed both of them. But back then there was very little CCTV, especially around here, no phones to track, and DNA techniques were rudimentary. But that has changed. Fuller was tracked down using modern DNA techniques which can identify a criminal through his family members. When this DNA swab was taken, it matched samples from the murder scenes, carefully stored for decades. Fuller's house provided more evidence. This picture, see the shoes he's wearing? They matched this footprint in blood from Wendy's bedsit.
And then it's got number 52, date of death.
He's identified the victims.
And slowly, police started to make discoveries which revealed what David Fuller was all about.
He's killed them, and evidence is indicating that he's killed them to then sexually abuse them.
After death?
After death. And that's the evidence that's been presented in court. Horrific murders. These young ladies, 25 and 20, brutalised for his sexual satisfaction.
The search continued.
It looks like he's got some hard drives in there, I would say.
but they're stuck to the back.
And these hidden hard drives contain devastating evidence. Fuller, a hospital maintenance man in 2 hospital mortuaries, carrying out sexual acts with dead bodies. He'd set up a camcorder and videoed himself. His swipe card gave him access to all areas. We can now report for the first time that at the Kent and Sussex Hospital and its successor, the Tunbridge Wells Hospital, at least 100 dead women were abused. They include a 9-year-old girl and a 100-year-old woman. Fuller recorded some of their names in a little black book, but said practically nothing to police.
Is there anything that you'd like to add or clarify at this point, David?
No. Leaving them to identify more than 78 victims from details in his videos. 78 and counting. Their families have been traced and visited.
We've got to tell them. We must tell them. And there are some that have said, we wish you hadn't told us. I don't know how I'd react if it happened to one of my close loved ones, whether I'd want to know about it.
Fuller's claim that he was mentally ill fell apart in court. Psychiatrist Dr. Richard Badcock has advised the police on cases including that of Harold Shipman.
The psychopathology at work here is very definitely one of sadomasochism, which in essence is not being able to deal with your own issues except by manipulated behaviour of other people. Although you're doing extreme things, you don't feel alive most of the time. You might only feel alive in the moment of the offence.
David Fuller will become notorious for crimes which will revolt the nation. His victims, so many women and girls, Wendy and Caroline, were not even safe after their deaths. Tom Simons, BBC News, Maidstone Crown Court.
Well, tonight the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid, has asked all NHS trusts to review access to mortuaries. Our health correspondent Catherine Burns is with me now. A really shocking story, and extraordinary that he had access to mortuaries, hospital mortuaries, over such a long period of time.
Well, it really is, but his job as an electrician gave him the perfect cover, because one of his responsibilities was to regularly check the temperatures of the fridges in the mortuaries. So he had a legitimate reason to be there. As Tom said, his swipe card gave him access. What happened as well was that mortuary staff, they tended to work till about 3:30 in the afternoon. His shift went on till 7 p.m, so it was very easy for him to be there alone. Now, there was CCTV cameras in the mortuary, about 6 dotted in and around it, but the focus was very much on stopping unauthorised access, not on checking on staff who were allowed to be there. Now, the hospital tonight has come out and it's said its feelings are with the families of the victims, and it started an investigation trying to find out how this could have happened, what it could have done to stop it. As you said, we've heard from the Health Secretary, Sajid Javid. He's ordered an investigation to find out if mortuary security is strong enough. He also says his thoughts are with the families, but also people who work for the NHS who he thinks will be profoundly shaken by this. And NHS England has written to all trusts with mortuaries, telling them they have to review their mortuary security. So it's not just enough to have CCTVs and swipe card data. They must be checked regularly to find out who is going in and out of mortuaries.
Catherine Burns, thank you. And Kent Police have set up a phone line for anyone who thinks their relatives or friends could have been affected. The number is 0800 051 5270. The Conservative MP, Owen Paterson, at the centre of a row over lobbying rules, has resigned, saying he will remain a public servant outside the cruel world of politics. His decision came after the government was forced into a major U-turn today over proposed changes to the way MPs are reprimanded for breaking the rules. Our political editor, Laura Koonsberg, reports.
Take a step back.
A different kind of protest.
We're just going to check in for time.
A different kind of attack to Green activists busy in Westminster today.
Come down here. Sorry.
Sleaze is the accusation against the government. Corruption, the claim. A former minister has now quit as an MP after he was found to have lobbied the government more than a dozen times for companies who paid him thousands of pounds. Standing down, Owen Paterson said, "My integrity has been repeatedly and publicly questioned. I maintain that I'm totally innocent. My children have asked me to leave politics altogether, for my sake as well as theirs. I agree with them. I will remain a public servant, but outside the cruel world of politics.
The ayes to the right, 250.
But Downing Street had tried to save him.
232.
Tories last night voted to tear up the rules he broke. But listen to the atmosphere in there.
Order.
What have you done to this place?
Dozens of Conservatives, outraged, stayed away.
It would be terrible.
But Number 10 had backed the attempt to overhaul the system that monitors behaviour that would have saved him. The immediate backlash was bruising, nearly all of the front pages damning, the internet alive with claims of sleaze, political rivals immediately sharpening attacks. Many Tories, too, were appalled.
Leave the House. Thanks.
So by mid-morning, ministers were back in the Commons, ditching the idea, and in effect, ditching Owen Paterson too.
Last night's vote has created a certain amount of controversy. It is important that standards in this House are done on a cross-party basis. While there is a very strong feeling on both sides of the House that there is a need for an appeals process, there is equally a strong feeling that this should not be based on a single case or applied retrospectively.
In other words, changing the rules that Mr Paterson broke is off for now.
So what's your reaction to what's happening?
But the opposition says it's a wider pattern.
Corrupt. I mean, there's no other word for it, I'm afraid. And often in a situation like this, you have a Prime Minister who is trying to lead on public standards. What you've got with this Prime Minister is a Prime Minister who is leading his troops through the sewer. And so it is a complete mess of their own making.
It's a very strong accusation to say this is corrupt.
Well, it is corrupt because there was a clear finding after due process.
Boris Johnson says he's sorry to see Mr Paterson go, but outrage at how the Prime Minister tried to use Parliament will take time to fade. And I think it's fair to say tonight that these shenanigans have backfired pretty spectacularly, not just meaning the end of Owen Paterson's political career, but also stirring up questions about what Downing Street was really trying to achieve here and the Prime Minister's own attitude to following the rules. And with a by-election now beckoning and the opposition parties, of course, keen to make the most of what they see as a political opportunity, I don't think for a single second we've heard the last of this yet.
Our political editor, Laura Kunsberg, thank you. An MP who made threatening phone calls to a woman because she was jealous of her relationship with her partner has been given a suspended sentence. Claudia Webb, the former Labour MP for Leicester East, who is now independent, has been handed a suspended 10-week jail sentence and 200 hours community service after being convicted of harassment. Westminster Magistrates Court heard she threatened the woman with acid. A new study suggests that cervical cancer has been virtually eradicated in young women because of the HPV vaccine programme. Around 3,200 women are diagnosed with cervical cancer in the UK each year, and 99% of these are caused by the human papillomaviruses. But cases of the disease have fallen by nearly 90% among women now in their 20s who were the first generation to get the jab. The vaccine is offered to all girls and boys in the UK at some stage between 11 and 13 years old, depending on where they live. Our health editor, Hugh Pym, reports.
3 women and 3 perspectives on a dramatic step forward with news of the success of the HPV vaccine. Evie missed out at school, but then found she could get the injections on the NHS.
I've now, at 23, got the vaccine. And yeah, this news is just really, really good because you can just see that the changes are happening and the vaccine's working.
It's come too late for Lynn, but she knows screening will give early warning of cancer caused by the virus.
The screening has been amazing, so that's helped people in the meantime. But yes, so it is a shame, but at least there's something to moving forward. Amazing, really amazing statistics.
A view shared by Penny.
So I think today is fantastic news, and it's a fantastic development.
Penny had cervical cancer, but it was picked up early thanks to a smear test, and after a major operation 3 years ago, she's now clear.
When I say to people I was lucky, I say that because I'd had 3 kids. I had no intention of having any more children. So although it was major surgery, for me, it didn't have the same impact that it might have on a woman who gets diagnosed in her 20s, who hasn't had any children, who is faced with the option that they have to, have a hysterectomy and they're not going to be able to have children naturally.
The new study looked at the impact of the vaccine after it was introduced for girls in England in 2008. It was also rolled out around the UK and from 2019 to boys aged 12 to 13. HPV can cause some cancers, including head and neck, in men, and the vaccine could help prevent those. No wonder scientists are hailing the significance of the research.
It's a really historic moment to show that at last we have this concrete proof that the vaccine is actually stopping people from getting cervical cancer. So it's an incredible story of the power of science and research and what we can achieve when we put that into practice.
The vaccine could make a big difference in developing countries like Laos, where it's been introduced for girls. Cervical cancer is the fourth most common among women worldwide, with 90% of deaths in low and middle-income countries where access to screening is limited. The World Health Organization has called for global action to eliminate cervical cancer and a major improvement in the health of women, both here and further afield. Hugh Pym, BBC News.
The government's latest coronavirus figures for the UK show there were just over 37,000 new infections recorded in the latest 24-hour period, down 2,500 on the same time last week. On average, there were 39,000 new cases reported per day in the past week. There were more than 9,000 people in hospital with COVID as of yesterday. 214 deaths were recorded. That's of people who died within 28 days of a positive test. On average, in the past week, 170 COVID-related deaths were recorded every day. 9 million people have received their booster jab. This includes third doses for those with certain health conditions. Well, the UK has become the first country in the world to approve an antiviral pill against COVID, the first of its kind, which will be used for vulnerable patients. In trials, the drug, called molnupiravir, was shown to halve the chances of dying or being hospitalised. The government has bought enough supplies to treat nearly 500,000 COVID patients. Our medical editor, Fergus Walsh, reports.
A pill that can stop COVID in its tracks. It's been the goal of scientists since the pandemic began. Now there is molnupiravir, and it's likely to be the first of many antiviral treatments. Anne-Marie tested positive for coronavirus on Tuesday and has just started a 5-day course of molnupiravir as part of a trial in Liverpool. She's had cancer and so is more vulnerable to COVID.
It is absolutely a life and death situation. I do have a family that I need to think about and I need to be here for them. And if this gives me the opportunity to be around for my son's wedding and everything else, then so be it.
When coronavirus infects cells, it makes multiple copies of itself. Molnupiravir, originally designed to treat flu, introduces errors in the virus's genetic code, which hampers its ability to spread.
It's probably 11:15 for the first patient.
It's over a year since the clinical research facility at Royal Liverpool University Hospital began testing molnupiravir on patients. Global trials have shown it halves the chances of dying or being hospitalised with COVID.
To have a drug like this, to have an antiviral that's potent, that's able to be taken orally, is a very important moment and does mark a milestone in our discovery of effective medicines against COVID.
The UK has ordered 480,000 courses of molnupiravir, with the first doses expected to arrive here later this month. It's been approved for people with at least one risk factor for COVID, such as being over 60, obese, or having heart disease. It's most effective when given within 5 days of symptoms appearing. The cost of the drug hasn't been revealed, but in the US, it's £500 per patient. The UK was the first country in the world to authorise the Pfizer and AstraZeneca vaccines, and now regulators here have again led the way by approving molnupiravir. It'll be months before doctors know how effective it is outside trials, but antivirals look set to play a key role in keeping COVID patients out of hospital. Fergus Walsh, BBC News.
The time is almost 6:20. Our top story this evening. hospital electrician David Fuller admits murdering 2 women more than 30 years ago and sexually abusing at least 100 dead bodies in hospital mortuaries in Kent. And coming up, some breaking news. Yorkshire County Cricket Club has been banned from holding international and major matches at Headingley because of a row over racism.
Coming up in Sports Day in the next 15 minutes on the BBC News channel, after 23 years, a milestone for David Moyes. West Ham's match in the Europa League is his 1,000th in football management.
The government says the end of coal is in sight after more than 40 countries promised to phase out the fossil fuel in the coming decades. It is said to be the single biggest contributor to climate change. Poland, Vietnam and Chile are among the fast-growing economies that now say they will reduce their coal use. But as our science correspondent Rebecca Morell reports, other big users of coal such as China and America haven't signed up to the deal.
A warning from the United Nations.
Listen up, people. I know a thing or two about extinction. Going extinct is a bad thing.
They say we need to stop climate change before it's too late. But to do that, fossil fuels will have to become a thing of the past. Today at the climate conference, the talk is all about energy, and top of the list is phasing out coal. This fossil fuel is the biggest single contributor to climate change, and more than 40 countries have now committed to move away from it.
I do believe that the end of coal is in sight. I do believe we're getting to a point where we consign coal power to history.
The agreement includes coal-reliant countries like Poland and South Korea, but missing are the US, India and most significantly China, where half of the world's coal is burned.
It has the biggest transition, the biggest challenges, and needs to really drive a structural change in its energy system. Today's precedents and movement really increases the pressure for them to come up with those solutions sooner rather than later.
Moving away from coal is the future aim, but what's happening to greenhouse gas emissions now? Since the 90s, carbon dioxide levels have been mainly rising, but during the pandemic, when the world shut down, they fell sharply. This year, though, they've increased rapidly again to almost the same amount.
Behind those numbers is really a big rebound in coal in particular. And so probably what is happening here is that the stimulus packages to go out of COVID, because they have stimulated the current economy, which is a fossil fuel economy.
But if we're to get to net zero emissions, what do we do about oil and gas? They've been filling some of the gaps behind coal, but some countries like Costa Rica and Denmark are setting a date to end their use. And other nations at COP26 are expected to do the same. But closer to home, the UK government has a pending decision over plans for a new coal mine in Cumbria to provide energy for the steel industry, pitting local jobs against the government's coal-cutting ambitions. Some nations, though, will face even tougher choices about their energy future. But scientists are clear,
ITV News
our reliance on fossil fuels needs to end fast. Rebecca Morell, BBC News, Glasgow.
Some breaking news now. The England and Wales Cricket Board has suspended Yorkshire County Cricket Club from hosting international and major matches and launched a review into the governance of the club. The step came after an investigation found that spin bowler Azim Rafiq had been the victim of racial harassment and bullying at the club. Our sports correspondent Laura Scott is at their Headingley ground for us. Tell us more.
Well, the race row at Yorkshire County Cricket Club deepens by the hour, with 2 more high-profile sponsors deserting the club over its handling of this situation. Nike said it would no longer be Yorkshire's kit supplier, saying it stands firmly against racism, and Harrogate Springwater ended its association too. Last night, the former England Test cricketer Gary Ballance admitted to using a racial slur against Azim Rafiq, something he said he deeply regrets, but had come during immature exchanges between best friends and teammates. He also said he didn't think it had caused Rafiq distress. Rafiq did respond on social media this morning. He said that his grievance wasn't to do with the words of certain individuals, rather it was what he considered institutional racism here at Yorkshire and its abject failures to tackle it. And in the last hour, the England and Wales Cricket Board have described Yorkshire's handling of the matter as wholly unacceptable. They said the matter was abhorrent and against the spirit of cricket. Now, the governing body has threatened financial sanctions, but it's already suspended Yorkshire from hosting major matches and suspended Gary Ballance from England's selection. Yorkshire County Cricket Club haven't commented this week, but an emergency board meeting will be held tomorrow amid mounting pressure on those in charge.
Laura, thank you. The Bank of England has kept interest rates at the historic low of 0.1%, but warned that we should expect rates to rise towards 1% in the coming months. The warning came as inflation, the rise in price of goods and services we buy, is on track to be more than 5% by next spring. Our economics editor Faisal Islam reports.
The economic picture is not as transparent as the main manufacturer of Clayton Glass in County Durham. What is crystal clear is that inflation is everywhere, in the wiring, in the packaging, and here at least in the wage packets.
All the gas-related price rises have come through in raw glass to us, circa 30%. Drivers' wages, 26% in the last 4 months. General wages, 10% in the last 12 months. Should inflation get to 5%, I don't believe that that level of inflation and cost pressures we're seeing in the business is sustainable at all.
But that's exactly what the Bank of England is now forecasting. That means interest rates will go up, just not at today's meeting, heading to around 1% in the next year. So rates are on hold this month, but they're going up in the near future. It was a close run thing because although the bank says there's not much it can do about inflation hitting 5% by April, it wants to stop a spiral of price rises, then wage rises, leading to even more price rises. And deep in the forecast was some rather depressing news about post-tax, post-inflation pay packets. It is energy prices that will push inflation to a decade high next year, says the bank. The outlook for wages and pay after inflation and taxes isn't just sluggish. They'll in fact go down over the next couple of years. Before the financial crisis, this measure grew by over 3% a year.
We have signalled today that we think that there will be some need to increase interest rates to bring inflation sustainably back to target, and we will be ready to do that.
Various claims have been made about high-wage economy, a new Prime Minister's economy that the Chancellor said at the budget. Not much evidence of that in your forecast today.
That is unfortunately the effect of having higher inflation.
And high taxes.
Particularly higher inflation, actually. And that is unfortunate. None of us wants to see this. We understand the causes of it, and we want to see it, obviously, move away and go away as quickly as possible.
And with widespread supply chain difficulties too, there are concerns about the strength of the post-lockdown recovery. Faisal Islam, BBC News.
Now, there are 51 days left until Christmas, and after last year's was all but cancelled, retailers are hoping for better business over the next few weeks. There have been warnings about possible supply shortages, with shoppers urged to buy their presents early. And today, two of the big hitters, John Lewis and Marks & Spencer, released their Christmas ads to try to boost business. Here's our business correspondent, Emma Simpson.
You know Christmas is coming when the John Lewis ad hits the screen. A heartwarming tale of a space traveller crash landing on Earth.
Here we go.
Today, a blizzard of blockbuster ads. Last Christmas was a washout thanks to COVID. Retailers hope we'll celebrate in style this time.
We are ready. We're pulling out all the stops.
And here at M&S, they say shoppers have started early.
It's a very big moment. Customers have told us they want a bigger and more magical Christmas than ever this year. And we can see them getting organised earlier than ever too. About half of our customers have said they're going to have all their presents bought by the end of this month. Can you believe it?
It's already looking festive at this big mall.
Have you started your Christmas shopping? I have, and I'm nearly finished because I've got 4 kids and they've all asked for big items, so yeah, I'm nearly done. Were you a bit worried about shortages?
I was, yeah, because of what they wanted is popular.
Definitely not, it's too early, sorry.
Oh, I'm nearly finished. Yeah, you're nearly finished, aren't you? Yeah, I started in September.
Boy, we could all do with a good Christmas this time round. Many retailers, though, are still dealing with global supply chain problems. Sainsbury's warning today, for instance, there'll be fewer electronic gadgets. So how worried should shoppers be?
There will be plenty of stock about. You should be a little bit concerned if there's something very special you want to buy and you might want to get that early. But the retailers want to get us into stores now. They want us to get buying at full price. They don't want to discount to us.
Which one should we do next?
But retailers do want the tills to be ringing, and the earlier, the better. Emma Simpson, BBC News.
Time now for a look at the weather. Ben Rich is here. I'm not going to ask you about snow, don't worry, but what's the weather like?
Just a little early, Sophie. You can ask me
that.
about that closer to the time. But actually, if anything, it's going to feel a little less festive, I think, over the next few days because the weather is turning milder. With that, a lot of cloud and for the weekend, wind and rain for some of us. Now, all of that extra cloud is going to be rolling in from the northwest as we go through tonight, bringing some spots of rain in places. When we hold on to clear skies towards the southeast, it'll turn cold for a time with a touch of frost, but in most places, temperatures by the end of the night will be creeping upwards, 9 or 10 degrees across parts of western Scotland, for example. But a cloudy start for most of us tomorrow, some outbreaks of light and patchy rain. Best chance of sunshine through the day through East Wales, the Midlands, eastern England, parts of eastern Scotland. Spots further west will see a lot of cloud and some splashes of rain and drizzle at times. But it is going to feel milder than it has done. We're looking at top temperatures between 10 and 13 degrees. Now through tomorrow night, bonfire night of course. It's not too bad if you have any celebrations planned. There'll be a lot of cloud, the odd spot of drizzle, but it will be mild. As we head into Saturday though, some very wet weather to come across northern areas. Heavy rain pushing southwards across Scotland into Northern Ireland, some rain into northern England and North Wales, sunnier skies following on behind, and it will be turning really windy in the north of the UK. Still mild though, highs of around 14 degrees. And then through Saturday night, some very windy weather for some of us close to this area of low pressure in the north. The white lines, the isobars really squeezing together. Could be a swathe of gales in the north of Scotland, gusts of 70 miles per hour or more. But Sunday should bring more sunshine for most of us. Chance for some showers in the far north. A little bit cooler by this stage, but those temperatures still in double digits. So it is going to be turning milder over the next few days, but with that, a lot of cloud and some wind and rain for some. Sophie.
Ben, thank you. And that's all from us. Now on BBC One, it's time for the news where you are. Goodbye.